562 BC, Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar ordered his men to only drink red wine and eat only red meat, while allowing a small group of men of royal blood to continue on eating only vegetables of their preference. After 10 days, he clearly noted that the men eating vegetables were well off and better nourished. Along with the famous 18th century trial of James Linn's scurvy, this is arguably the world's first clinical trial. And so the history of randomized controlled trials continues today, the gold standard for clinical research. But yet, why in some fields do we continue to see low quality and limited evidence? I work in the field of infection prevention and control, or IPC. This is specific and evidence-based actions that can be used in the hospital to prevent and control healthcare-associated infections. We recently conducted a systematic literature review on the impact of IPC interventions in the hospital on high-priority antibiotic-resistant pathogens called carbapenem-resistant gram-negative bacteria. But we found only 10 studies, all of which were rated low to very low quality of evidence, mostly non-controlled before and after studies, and none in low-resource settings. I believe the reasons for this are multifactorial. There are many challenges with conducting robust studies in hospitals during times of outbreaks. There's a lot of pressure to conduct trials and little else. And there's also little awareness on what are strong alternative study designs, particularly in the field of IPC in the hospital. But there are strong alternatives. I believe that we need to redefine the field of IPC research. Recently, there's been more research and literature on the value of pragmatic trials. You have your classical trial, which is measuring the efficacy of interventions in an ideal scenario, and you have your pragmatic trials, which is measuring the effectiveness of interventions in a real-life scenario. So there are broader groups of patients, outcomes, and criteria, which then can be applied to routine clinical practice. And then there is your well-designed quasi-experimental studies, my favorite being the interrupted time series, so that if you don't have the ability to randomize or use a control group, but you do have surveillance data over time, you can look at sufficient data points before the intervention and sufficient data points after and measure the change in level or the slope over time. These methods, among others, should be more broadly encouraged among clinical researchers. I believe that global collaborations should be improved to build the capacity on these methods, and I believe it's now time to redefine the paradigm of methodological rigor, particularly in the field of IPC. Thank you.